the end rows here, and I think this is where spray tank clean out really shows up for a lot of guys. When they first get into a field, okay, I've been spraying my corn, now I'm going to switch over to beans, and I didn't quite get all my status rinsed out of the tank. Well, guess where it's going to show up? Right away on the end rows.
Well, not necessarily, because here's what happens a lot of times. Guys will switch over from corn and they've been using some Status or Callisto, Loudus, some product like that. Then they mix up enough to spray their beans, and then they mix up another tank and another tank and another tank, but then it starts to rain. So they have to go put the sprayer in the shed for a week. They go back out a week later to spray beans, and oh my goodness, I'm really hurting my beans. I wonder, was my Roundup contaminated? I always tell guys, yeah, it was. It was contaminated by your sprayer. Because here's the thing, when you let Roundup or most any chemical sit in a sprayer for a week, guess what happens? They're really good tank cleaners, some of the best on the market, in fact, and they'll suck out everything that's been in those pores from years back even, unless you have properly cleaned out your sprayer. So today we're going to tell you how you can avoid those problems on your farm.
So when we're talking about spray tank clean out, there are a lot of old things that people used to do. Oh, I just use some household ammonia, or I use some Clorox bleach, or I don't know how many different household products I've heard of. Don't use those. They don't really work. I'll tell you a couple examples. When we talk about Clorox bleach, you don't want to be working around large volumes of Clorox bleach. Believe me, there is a health risk there. When it mixes with some of the nitrogen that could be in that spray tank, it causes some pretty dangerous compounds you don't want to be around. The other thing is household ammonia. We hear a lot of guys saying, oh, I'll just use some ammonia. It does a pretty good job peeling stuff off the sides of my tanks. That may be true, but it doesn't keep it in solution. So when you empty that tank out, there's kind of a slimy film that just goes right back on the bottom of your tank. You didn't really do any good.
Yep, so our point today is use a very good tank cleaner, something like Inside Out, or there are a few others on the market, and do a good job that way. Triple rinse your tank. But then here's the other step that most people do not do. When you're switching from one crop that, let's say it's corn, switching over to beans, and you've been using some Status or something else that you know could hurt those beans, you've got to let your sprayer sit overnight with tank cleaner in it full and drain out or suck out all those compounds that were in the fibers of the poly tank before. And also don't forget to fully charge your boom, pull off your spray tips, clean those out, let them sit overnight. You've got to let stuff sit overnight with tank cleaner. That way it can suck everything out of there and you will have a perfectly clean tank.
Your filters as well. Have them sitting where they can soak in some tank cleaner. Get stuff perfectly cleaned out. Now, how much is this going to cost, Brian? It sounds pretty expensive and time-consuming.
Yeah, it's not expensive at all. It just costs a few dollars. But the time-consuming part, yes, it does take a little time. But you know what? I don't mind spending having my sprayer filled overnight. It's not that big a deal. You're only going to spend an extra couple hours doing this, and how often do you switch back and forth? Well, you know what? If you do switch back and forth a lot, you need to have a second sprayer. But if you are only switching back and forth like on our farm a couple times a year, you know what? It's not that big a deal. But there's no way I'm spraying wheat after I've been spraying Roundup unless our guys have that spray tank completely full with tank cleaner and water, and then they let it sit overnight. That's the only way we'll end up going and spraying wheat.
So this year, don't have problems on your farm. Fill your tank up, let it sit overnight full of water and tank cleaner, charge those booms, take the tips off, the filters, everything. Do a really good job this year. You will see a difference in your fields.
Well, another thing you might see in your fields is weeds like our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you what it is coming up next.